Just as I told the girl, I started off my summer vacation by doing homework. Other than not going to school, my daily life didn't change much. I saw the maid more frequently, since she came in during the afternoon on weekdays. She was good at cleaning the house. Apparently, she had also been cleaning my room while I wasn't at home. If you decide you want to clean your room yourself instead, just let me know, she smiled, clearly hoping she wouldn't have to do as much work. After finishing my homework, I filled my free time by studying other things. When I finished doing that too, I grew bored and went to look for the cats. The tortoiseshell cat would usually run away, but the piebald cat had started to get used to me and would jump onto my lap from time to time. I pat its back, feeling like I was making definite progress. What else are you supposed to do during summer break, I wonder? Whenever my mind wandered, I'd start thinking about silly things, and sometimes my thoughts would gravitate towards that girl. She was a strange girl, I thought. That was basically my whole impression of her, other than the caution that wove itself into the back of my mind. If I kept looking right at her, it felt like I might see something entirely new. It was like I had seen into a part of myself I didn't know. As if I had gone underwater and couldn't go back. But I was probably just being paranoid. I didn't know whether I wanted those changes to happen, or wanted to run away from them. I wondered just how hot the palms of that girl's hands felt. Then it was Wednesday. The one day I now couldn't help being painfully aware of. When I headed out, it didn't feel like I was going to swim class so much as that I was going to see that girl. It wasn't about whether I liked her or not. It was more that I was being drawn towards her, somehow. The cicadas were chirping along the road as always. The sun was strong, and the clouds gathered overhead. Somehow, though, it felt like the sunlight was even whiter than usual. Everything seemed fuzzy around the edges. I couldn't make things out, even when I rubbed my eyes. Don't tell me. I touched the corner of my eye. Had my eyesight gotten a bit worse? The image of the notes on my desk came to mind. Maybe I had abused my eyes so much that they now specialized in seeing things that were close to me at the cost of those that were further away. Because I had focused on making myself better, there were things about me that had gotten worse. It reminded me of the feeling of pushing my fingers down on both sides of a scale. I arrived at the swimming class building. I bet she's here. Even before I went inside, I had a foreboding sense that she would be in the lobby again. The accumulating heat seemed to coil around my hair, so I shook it off as I went up the stairs. It wasn't coincidence that I kept running into that girl at the entrance. She had been waiting for me there. Sure enough, she was pushing up against the window again. There was a chair right next to her, but she showed no interest in sitting in it. And of course, she didn't have her school backpack on today. I stared at her waiting back for a moment. Hello? I think this might have been the first time that I was the one to greet her. Oh, Saeki-san! She turned around immediately. The girl seemed genuinely thrilled as she came over to my side. And she waved innocently. I wondered if her palms were already hot. If her back had started to sweat. If she would eventually figure out what those feelings really were. And whether I wanted to know the full extent of them. The girl stood next to me, as though it were exactly where she belonged. The receptionist, I noticed, was watching us with amusement. I felt like she was wrongly assuming we were close. We weren't. At the very least, I didn't think we had the kind of friendship that warranted someone staring at us and smiling. It's so great being on summer vacation. Is it? As we headed to the changing room, I tilted my head at her. She seemed to want me to agree. I mean, I don't really like school anyway. Do you like school, Saki-san? Um, when she put it that way. I suppose I didn't dislike it. I never had to worry about being bored. I certainly had no idea what to do with myself during summer vacation. We went into the changing room and stopped in front of the lockers like always. And she looked at me, like she always did. She was watching me while I changed my clothes. Her gaze seemed to carry a different meaning to me now, and the awareness made my movements stiff. I tried my best not to show it, facing forward as I continued changing. I locked the locker, and right as I turned to head to the pool, the girl cut in front of me. Of course, she hadn't changed yet. She was still just looking at me. I'll be there in a sec. Sure. I passed her by. This was normal. Just normal. We weren't best friends forever or anything silly like that. And yet, she clearly considered me special. The lesson started, and unlike in the changing room, I was the one following after her in the pool. I began to recognize the difference in her superior swimming form. She didn't learn from other people, but still forged ahead. I was starting to realize that some people were just like that. It did bother me, of course, but the coolness of the water placated me, calming me down. I followed the instructor's directions, doing laps back and forth across the pool. I made sure to move my body carefully in line with what I had been taught. As I came and went, I checked next to me, but I didn't see her. Maybe she had passed me without my noticing. When I finished my lap, I touched my hand to the wall and surfaced. Ah! When I brought my face out of the water, she was right next to me. Apparently, she had gone across the lanes at some point to enter mine. Her goggles were on her forehead, leaving her eyes exposed. They were slick with water, just like her skin. What is it? You're the one who was looking at me. I thought you needed something. I could feel the other kids' eyes on us. Should we really keep talking like this? I was just admiring your swimming. I gave her a straightforward excuse, trying to get her to go back to her lane quickly. But she responded with an easygoing, "Aw, shucks, really?" And she was pleased to hear the compliment. It seemed like she really didn't care about the other people around her. I suppose the only exception was me, because I made her feel hot. You're good at swimming too, Saki-san. Thanks. But I don't think your arms are in the right position when you push through the water. Really? Yeah, try it like this. She reached over to grab my arm and showed me how to position it. But then she stopped halfway and withdrew. The girl stared at her own hand. It was so sudden. It felt as though time had stopped all around us. Hello? When I spoke to her quietly. She didn't say anything, but just splashed her way back into her own lane. She stopped looking at me after that, and I tried not to look in her direction either. Instead, I focused on where my arms were when I paddled the water. It didn't feel like I was going any faster. After class ended, and we said our goodbyes, I realized that the girl was still standing in place, alone, while everyone else went back to the changing room. Just as I was about to ask her what was wrong, she jumped into the deserted pool without hesitation. Splosh! She sent up a giant splash, like she had carved out a part of the water. The instructor came running back. Hey, what do you think you're doing? When the instructor yelled at her, the girl came up to the surface. She floated there on her back, right in the middle of the pool. There she stayed, unmoving, completely ignoring the instructor's warning. Looking closer, I realized that she had taken off her swim cap and goggles at some point, leaving them to float elsewhere in the pool. Just when I thought she was behaving, the instructor sighed. But I knew what was happening. It was something that no one but me could know. The girl's entire body had probably become so hot that she just couldn't help it. I wondered how hot she must feel. I wondered if I would be able to tell even in the water. Saeki? The instructor's voice stuck to the back of my head and then slipped off easily. Though not as flashly as the girl had, I jumped off the edge of the pool and dove into the water too. The loud sound of water bubbling up surrounded my head. I thought of fixing my swim cap when it started slipping off. But then I remembered the girl's cap and let the water take it. My goggles and cap came off just like hers, and all my hair was submerged in water, dragging me downward. As I kicked off the pool wall and swam over to the center, my floating legs trembled. I moved them as though I was pushing away the water. The girl sank downward in a haze of bubbles, then changed direction and started swimming over to me. I swam toward her too, so we met in the middle before we ran out of air. We were still on the water when our eyes met. Even without our goggles, the otherwise empty pool was still enough that we could see each other's faces clearly. Her eyes, which seemed to sparkle even underwater, captivated me. The bubbles quietly continued to rise around us. It was odd, but I didn't feel anywhere near out of breath. We stared at each other, not attempting to speak. I wondered whether the instructor was angry with us on the surface. "Why did you come down here?" the girl's eyes seemed to ask me. "I came here to find out," I responded silently, letting out some bubbles. "To find out how hot your palms are." I took the girl's hand. That seemed to surprise her. She breathed out a whole bunch of bubbles, kicking her feet to stay in position. She looked at the hand I had taken into mine. The colors of our hands contrasted, so even my faltering eyesight could see their outlines clearly. Her hands really were warm, just like she said. The heat radiating off her palm seemed to beat with a steady pulse, almost thrumming against the water. Her fingertips tensed tightly against mine. The girl looked from our connected hands to my face and back, in this world where not even breath could reach us. Then, with a relaxed expression that wasn't quite a smile, she took my other hand. With our both hands connected, our fingers intimately intertwined, I felt like my own hands might be getting hot too. The moment we shared was wondrous, like a perfectly spherical bubble that would pop at the slightest touch. It felt like a never-ending dream, but my need for air began to rise, as if to prove that it was just an illusion. I motioned with my eyes, asking if we could surface. Despite all the air that she had lost before, the girl still seemed fine. She shook her head slightly and brought her face close to mine. What was she doing? I braced myself, but my hands were still in hers, so I couldn't move to stop her. The girl brought her face to the crook of my neck. I felt my skin breaking out into goosebumps, even though we were in the water. All at once, her lips were pressed against my skin, Then they moved, ever so slightly, and I felt my head spinning like a whirlpool. Something began to overflow from the space between her lips and my neck. Bubbles rose in front of my eyes, along with a muddled, burbling sound. Dizzy as I was, I finally realized what the girl was trying to do. Air. She was trying to give me air, so that we could be alone together, if only for a little longer. Her bubbles brushed against my lip as they headed towards the surface. I accepted them, as if breathing those bubbles into my own lungs. In that moment, my heart cracked.